Are you really prepared for a disaster? Well, if you're not sure, then watch this video and see for yourself on how far is your knowledge on disaster risk reduction is. So, did you know that each year, hundreds of people are killed and a large amount of public and private properties are destroyed in landslide, flood, fire, typhoon, and earthquakes? Well, if we really see into it, it's not just hundreds, because according to the Global Natural Disaster Assessment Report in 2020, a total of 98.96 million people were affected by natural disasters globally, of whom 45.95% were affected by storms, reaching to 45.47 million people. And by floods, we have 33.56%, reaching to 33.22 million people. As for droughts, we have 18.97%, which reaches to 18.78 million people, and less than 2% were affected by other types of disasters. As you watch this video, I want you to have a checklist on the things that you are aware of in terms of landslide preparedness, flood control, typhoon preparedness, fire prevention and control, and lastly, earthquake preparedness. Also, take note of the things that you are not yet aware of, especially on the courses of action we can possibly do to reduce risk or exposure to hazard. For this will help us keep track if you are truly prepared for a disaster. Being prepared also means to say that you are capable of putting your knowledge into action. And according to Protective Action Decision Model, decision making follows a three-stage process. A wise behavioral response only comes after when a person is aware of keys to action and can effectively weigh potential threats. And so, let's take the first step in making a wise behavioral response by becoming fully aware of the disaster risk reduction management. In line with that, the current study found out that compared to other disasters, people are least aware in terms of landslide preparedness. And so, let's start with landslide preparedness. Let's start this with the precautionary measures to take before a landslide. So first, find out if landslide has happened in your area in the past years. And it is important to be aware of the emergency response and evacuation plans for your area. And most importantly, watch news and stay updated on the current weather situations. Also, consider living. If you are in areas susceptible to landslide and debris flows, consider leaving if it is still safe to do so. Now, what are the things to do during a landslide? If you are near a stream or channel, be alert for any sudden increase and decrease in water flow and for a change from clear to muddy water, because that is an indication of landslide. And whenever you are in a path of a landslide or debris flow, move as quick as possible. If escape is not possible, curl into a tight ball and protect your head. So, of course, we also have things to do after surviving a landslide. So first, check for injured and trapped persons near the slide without entering the direct slide area. Watch out and report associated dangers such as broken electrical wirings, water, gas, and sewage lines, also for damaged roadways and railways. Here are additional information about landslides. Heavy rains and earthquakes can cause landslides. Tension cracks in the ground are indication of possible landslides. And building codes and standards emphasize the use of materials to reinforce structures resilient to landslides.
So how can we prevent damages and fatalities caused by landslides? First, do not construct buildings near steep slopes, mountains, drainage way, and natural erosion valleys. And of course, forests must be protected and illegal logging must be banned. Building of drainages and tunnels must be improved to stabilize tilts. A concrete retaining wall must be built to secure towns, villages, and tunnels located at the bottom slopes prone to landslides. And now let's proceed to flood control. So what are the precautionary measures that we can take before a flood happens? First, it is important to know the emergency numbers to call, like that of the local hospital and emergency response team. Find out if you live in a flood-prone area and whether your property is above or below the flood storage water level. Turn off the main switch of the electricity. Move the important items to higher places. And beware of the local warning system of flood and monitor the flood level gauge to check if there is a need to evacuate already. And now let's know what are expected of you to do during a flood. So when the flood water rises, move to higher places. And stay close to your family. Do not panic. Ask for help and wait for the rescuers to arrive. Also, don't touch electrical devices when there is water around. And after a flood, you are to return home with your family only when the officials tell you that it is already safe to do so. Do not turn on the electric supply yet, especially if it was reached by the flood water. Have it checked by an electrician first. And an additional information about flood, reclaimed areas and expansion for urban settlements are usually flood prone. It is also dangerous to build houses along the roadside of the hills. So how can we prevent damages and fatalities caused by flood? A community must have a flood evacuation plan. There must also be a flood evacuation drill at least once a year. And hand in hand, the community must clean the drainages and make sure that it is not clogged.
Putting a local flood level gauge to serve as a guide when to evacuate. Mangrove trees and coral reefs should be protected as they act as natural wave breakers. Wetlands and forests can serve as a flood control system. And lastly, planting vegetation to retain extra water, terracing hillsides to slow flow downhill, and the construction of floodways can be done to control the flood. Now, let's proceed to typhoon preparedness. And let's start with the things to do before a typhoon. So first, store an adequate supply of food and water that can last for a few days. These are foods that does not need to be cooked, like sardines or any canned goods, and instant noodles. Always have an emergency kit ready, and know the emergency numbers to call, like that of the local hospital and emergency response team. And during a typhoon, if there is still power, listen to local radios or TV program. Also, take time to visit the Pag-asa website for storm advisory. Stay inside the house and keep calm. Postpone if ever you have any travel plans. Put your important belongings in an elevated area. Unplug electricity before going to an evacuation center. Do not evacuate when the wind is already strong. And upon evacuation, beware of huge trees and avoid the way leading to rivers and along the river. And after a typhoon, if your house was damaged, make sure that it is safe and stable before entering inside. Watch out for live wires or electrical outlets immersed in water. Have a knowledgeable person inspect your electrical connection before using the electrical appliances. The following are additional information about typhoon. Typhoon public information dissemination is done by the Pag-asa and PHIVOX through radio, social media, and text blasts. There are evacuation centers allotted for those living in a medium-built houses or houses that are not so well constructed and made up of light materials only. Windproof buildings are needed to provide communities with shelter. In cases when there is incoming typhoon, it pays to know the meaning of the tropical cyclone warning signal. If there is signal number 1, winds of 30 to 60 kilometers per hour may be expected, and wave height may reach from 1.5 to 4 meters. This is indicated by one short siren signal alerting the public to be vigilant for the upcoming disaster, and classes in kindergarten are suspended. It can cause slight damage to homes made of light materials and crops such as rice, may be damaged. If there is signal number 2, winds of 61 to 120 km per hour may be expected, and wave height may reach from 4.1 to 14 meters, and storm surge is possible in coastal areas. This is indicated by two short siren signals alerting the public for possible evacuation, and classes in kindergarten, elementary, and high school are suspended. This can cause damage to old homes or those made of light materials, roofs, old electric posts, and billboards. Also, it can possibly damage banana plants and coconut trees. During warning signal number 3, winds of 121 to 170 kilometers per hour may be expected. The wave height may reach 14 meters and storm surge is possible. This is indicated by three short siren signals alerting the public to commence evacuation for those high-risk areas, and classes in all levels are suspended, from kinder up to graduate schools. With this kind of intense wind, sturdy roofs can be damaged, and it's better not to leave the house. When the storm is raised to signal number 4, winds of 171 to 220 km per hour may be expected. Wave height may reach more than 14 meters, and 2 to 3 meters of storm surge is possible in coastal areas. It can damage the roof, walls, door, windows, and even blow down billboards. The banana plants and coconut trees may suffer severe damage in many areas. In this typhoon warning signal, it is important to remember the following. First, watch out and follow preemptive evacuation orders by authorities due to extreme weather conditions. And disruption of power supply and communication lines should be expected. In addition to the 4 warning signals, Pag-asa added signal number 5 or super typhoon with winds up to 220 kilometers per hour. Wave height may reach more than 14 meters and a 3-meter storm surge is possible. Widespread damage to structures is expected during this storm signal. It may cause damage even to buildings and all billboards, just like what happened to Tacloban and other parts of Visayas when Typhoon Yolanda hit in 2013. Disasters are inevitable, and ignoring preparations may result to fatalities of residents in high-risk areas. That's the reason why we need to raise awareness. So how can we prevent damages and fatalities caused by typhoon? First, cooperate with local authorities. Before a typhoon, trees and shrubs around your home should be well trimmed so they are more wind resistant. And another thing, avoid building directly in coastlines because they are at high risk on storm surge. And lastly, by doing structural measures or by building strong structures to withstand impact caused by winds, this can reduce the damages that are caused by typhoons. And now, let's proceed to fire prevention and control. So how can we prevent fire accidents from happening? Well, faulty electrical wiring is the most common cause of fire cases in the country. That's why we need to first inspect cords and check for any signs of damage. Second, keep appliances unplugged when not in use. And third, avoid octopus connections or overload electrical outlets. Also, always check your LPG tank and hose for leaks, and never leave your stove unattended. Fifth, do not overuse your appliances to prevent overheating that may cause fire. And sixth, keep a working fire extinguisher at home and teach your entire household how to use it. If you need to use the fire extinguisher, remember the acronym PASS, P-A-S-S. It's simple. First, pull the pin and break the seal. Next, aim the hose at the base of the fire. Then squeeze the handle to release the content while sweeping back and forth to cover the entire fire area. Carelessness. This can also be a cause of house fire. That's why flammable liquids such as alcohol, gas, and lighter fluid should be removed from your homes. But if a flammable item must be kept in your home, make sure to keep flammable items out of reach of your children and pets, and store it in a fireproof container. So, what should you do during a fire? Leave immediately. Get out as quick and as safely as possible. Don't try to fight the fire. Find the nearest exit and crawl there. Smoke rises, so be sure to stay low. The safest air is 12 to 24 inches off the ground. And if your clothes catch fire, immediately stop, drop to the ground, and roll with your hands over your face to put off the flames. Then, call the Bureau of Fire as soon as possible to put off the fire. Here are some additional information about fire safety. There is a need to leave escape routes unobstructed every time for easy flow of people when the need arises. It is also important to have adequate signages indicating an appropriate muster point in case of emergency, and installation of central alarm to notify people of an emergency would reduce the risk of casualties in the event of a fire outbreak. Establish a family emergency communications plan and ensure that all household members know who to contact if they cannot find one another. And lastly, a fire drill is necessary to help us prepare and act properly during a possible fire outbreak. Now let's proceed to the last part, which is earthquake preparedness. So, before an earthquake, it is important to keep an emergency kit in an easy to access location. And also, like any other disasters, we must prepare an evacuation plan to follow. And during an earthquake, it is important for us to duck, cover, and hold. And also, keep calm, be alert, and don't panic. Bear in mind that we must also stay away from glass windows and heavy furnitures or any other appliances that may fall. And also, stay away from trees, branches of trees, and structures that might collapse. Go to higher grounds, for tsunami might occur after an earthquake. Well, if you're at home, you should follow your evacuation plan. And if ever you're in a vehicle, pull over to a clear location and stop. After an earthquake, we are to expect aftershocks, so we need to stay alert. We are to check injuries, stay away from damaged areas, and if you're in a building, go out of there, because after an earthquake, the aftershocks might cause the structure to collapse. Listen to the news for the latest emergency information. And here are some additional information about earthquakes. Earthquakes are not predictable. Therefore, one must have a presence of mind all the time. It is necessary to know how to administer the basic first aid for minor injuries caused by earthquakes. And it is important to not forget to turn off the electrical supply during an earthquake. And of course, open fields are a safer place to stay to avoid falling debris or objects caused by earthquakes. It is also dangerous to place large and heavy furniture near the door, for these might block the exit during an earthquake. It is important to always bear in mind the entrance and exit location of a house or building so one can manage to move out even in the absence of light, especially when earthquakes happen during nighttime. And most importantly, A fault line map must be displayed in front of each municipality or barangay halls, highlighting areas with higher earthquake risk to raise awareness. And to avoid great damage, houses should follow correctly the guidelines and building code so that it will not easily collapse, even at a higher magnitude earthquake. So, that would be all, and thank you for watching.